Well, shut up, Sottle. We got a second match to do.
Nailed it.
How's that for being mean for you?
Perfect. 10 out of 10.
All right. Well, Pavel versus Jarla is what the next one we have. You can see the protection and pick phase that took place at the bottom. That Divine Shield around the class means that class has been protected prior to ban, so it's ineligible for that to happen. So on Pavel's side, he protected Priest. On Jarla's side, he's protected Priest. Not too unusual, I would say, given the standard right now. And so Jarla's had his Control Warrior banned away, and for Pavel, he's had his Quest Druid banned away in this week. And so something that we noticed in the last one was when Pavel had brought Reno Mage, that it pulled 2 bans in the previous week. And so things have changed. That is now an option available to him in this match. And I'm kind of excited about it because this is, I think, quickly becoming one of the bigger talks of a deck that, hey, you know, even though it got a lot of power taken away from Luna's Pocket Galaxy and from the ability to cast early Conjurer's Callings, it's still a very strong deck.
It is, yeah. I think just the power of Pocket Galaxy coming down on 7 is still enough in some matchups, especially if you're able to accelerate towards it with various means from Zephyrus or Coin or whatever. But I do think it's still a powerful deck. It's just been scaled back from potentially being, you know, top 2 or 3 decks in the game before the nerfs.
Yeah, and so we can take a look specifically at Pavel's list where I wanted to highlight the Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron inclusion. I think that this is correct. It's a wacky card. It does a lot of crazy things. It is often a card that you still lose the game in the games that you play it. However, its point is to have a dramatic effect in games where you have no hope of winning otherwise.
Yeah, I don't like that I have to support including this card in your deck because it's the kind of card that I just don't enjoy playing with personally, but I think just the ability to play a card that just wins you a game from a position where you're 10, 15, 20% to win the game sometimes. Like, yeah. Like
or less.
You need, yeah, or less. Like, you can literally be 0.1% and you can hit it. Like, it's that kind of crazy card. And it will always have a low win rate when you look at stats for that reason, because that's the kind of situation that it's played in a lot of the time. But the point is, if a card says, when you play this card, you win the game 30% of the time, that card would have a 30% win rate, but it would be broken. It would be one of the best cards in the game. So the stats can be very deceptive when it comes to Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. I think it is a must include. I'm just mad about it.
Yeah, and parsing the data is just as important as the data itself. You know,
yeah.
What does that data mean? You're not going to cast this card when you're winning just because you feel like it in terms of an only competitive environment. If your goal is to win as many Hearthstone games as possible, this card plays a role in the games where you are just not going to win them otherwise. This card literally always has a chance to outright win you the game.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of just Mage in a nutshell. It's can find that in a lot of situations where it just has some weird chance of just winning the game, whether it's, you know, Stargazer Luna into a perfect sequence of draws, whether it's a Conjurer's Calling out. I think it's something where you can always just fish those lines out of nowhere. Not to mention that it is just a kind of vanilla, generically good deck. Like, it plays a ton of incredibly high-quality cards in it, so you can just take over games very naturally.
Yeah, it's a pretty exemplary mid-range deck that the Mage deck is. But I want to take a look at Pavel's Paladin, as that's what he's going to be playing in our first game here. And it's, you know, slowly but surely every player has opted into Zephyrus at this point.
Oh yeah, Zephyrus is just core to this deck.
It is just core. Like, I've seen it played so much sense. I've just seen it played so much, it just makes so much sense. And the fact that it's in here, I'm happy to see, because you know, Pavel has included the Soup Vendor as well. He says, I'm not getting rid of this card. It still makes sense in the deck as well, which honestly I have found to be true. I've played both versions, and I've always liked the Zephyrus versions because it has Zephyrus. I've always liked the Soup Vendor versions because it's extra card draw. Why not just take both?
Yeah, and it does make sense because also, like, the one-of Soup Vendor, when you're playing a Zephyrus deck like this, where your goal is just to draw deep into your deck and have Zephyrus active, playing some kind of redundant effects does make sense. That's why you now see one Shrink Ray, one Equality, etc., as opposed to being a double copy of one, so then there's just another 2-of that you have to draw before your Zephyrus being active. So Soup Vendor coming in as like a one-of card draw effect that you're able to potentially get off later with Flash of Light or whatever else, like that can be very, very powerful.
Draws off Crystology too. You know, 1/4s on turn 2 can chip away for a couple damage, and even with Zephyrus in the list, Pavel has prioritized 2 True Silver Champions. Oftentimes, that's one of the cuts to make room for Zephyrus stuff, and 2 True Silver Champions is a lot of damage that gets tacked into this deck. So I think this build is looking great. I think the Acolyte of Pain in here is awkward, and I'm glad that Pavel's found a way to replace it.
Yeah, the True Silver Champion is also sometimes synergy with Soup Vendor. It's specifically Soup Vendor, Crystal Smith Kangor on the same board. Then you can make that happen. So again, sort of another little buff for having 2 True Silvers in there. But I think that is the difficulty with building this deck right now, is that you have to be very, very convinced. Like, you need a good reason. You have to ask yourself the question, do I need 2 of this card? And then you have to have a very, very good reason to say yes. And I think True Silver Champion is borderline on that scenario. I know I've played a lot of games where I'm like, man, if I just had another 8 damage this game, oh, it's so much easier. But at the same time, it's just one of those awkward, clunky cards that sometimes get stuck in your hand in some matchups as well. But then you can look at that the other way around as well. It's like it's a free card that you can just play when you need to get a card out of your hand, and it's never really particularly bad in a situation. So I think the debate will roll on in terms of what's a 1 of and what's a 2 of in this Zephrys Holy Wrath Paladin list. But I like the deck a lot. I think there's a lot of decks right now that are super interesting in the metagame, and I think Holy Wrath Paladin is right up there. Yeah,
one of the things that I found with True Silver Champion is actually the fact that it gets buried in my deck a lot. Like, I thought about how often 2 True Silver Champions have been buried in players' decks, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, you have Crystologies that draw minions. You have Prismatic Lens that draws spells and minions from your deck.
Yes.
Like, you have these cards that are pulling out specific things from your deck. You're not drawing the True Silver Champions from like, your prime card draw effects that are in the deck. Of course, sometimes you're going to get buried. And I think that's actually part of the reason that players have swapped to one of them is like, hey, you know what? I actually don't have a specific way to draw this card. For everything else in the deck, that's a different story.
Yeah, and that's why it's hard to do like raw numbers on Holy Wrath Paladin in terms of, you know, what's my percentage of having Zephrys active with 5 cards left if I have this many 2-ofs in your deck, because there's just so many modifiers to that equation based on which cards are 2-ofs and which cards are tutors for those 2-ofs. But I think you make an excellent point that True Silver Champion is one of the hardest cards to draw specifically. But Pavel here, I think that's part of the reason also why he just keeps it in his mulligan. It's like, all right, job done. I drew a True Silver this game.
Yeah.
Just mark that off the list.
It's versus Priest as well.
Yep.
It's a card that's necessary. Jarla running a pretty standard-looking list of Priest at this point. Double Silence, Topsy-Turvy, 1 copy of Extra Arms. 1 copy of Wild Pyromancer is the one that really stood out to me this week. He made room for the 2nd Silence by cutting 1 copy of Wild Pyromancer. That is an unusual thing, so forgive me for saying looking standard. It did look that way, but it is not that way. 1 Wild Pyro. You JK? That's part of the reason Cleric draws so many cards.
What's coming in to replace it? The 2nd copy of Silence, I guess, is the direct replacement coming in instead?
Inverse Flame Imp. Heal your opponent. 3/2.
Yeah, also it's not a Flame Imp until turn 2.
Well,
it's quite a lot worse when you think about it. But
bootleg.
All right, fair enough.
Coin to call. However, that does make the healing your opponent possibility trade still open. I think Pavel would be pretty delighted to see the mana expenditure from Jarla, though. You know, I've seen and I've heard so much about talking about foregoing attacks when facing against Light Warden, but I think that the opponent just using 2 mana to bolster a Light Warden is often like one of the best things that you can see against the deck. It means they're not playing more stuff.
Yeah, it's... We had this argument earlier. Like, you're still adding stats to the board, though, and you're getting to add stats to the board without using a resource whatsoever. Like here, it's fine, because the Light Warden doesn't really do anything. Like, you're so close to being able to do something absolutely adorable with this Topsy-Turvy, but it just doesn't quite work. If you could get 4 onto the health and then heal again afterwards to buff up, you could take the value trade, but it just doesn't quite work.
Topsy Divine Spirit Interfire?
No, I'm passing on that one.
Yeah, I figured you would.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know there was something cute. It's just not very good.
I specified adorable, and that was not adorable.
That's subjective.
Yeah. All right. Fair point.
Check mark. Admirable. 1-0.
Oh, we're keeping score now.
This week I am. I'm not going to keep score from the previous weeks. I'm definitely losing on that front.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, are we only keeping score of when someone concedes that they're wrong? Because in that case, I'm just never winning a single point ever.
That's not true. I conceded 2 points last week.
It's the best possible response you can have to that. That's not true.
You got to give people what they expect sometimes.
I'm the best at admitting when I'm wrong.
The best.
1 shot, 1 kill.
That's weird looking.
Just wanted to take Jarla to 29 town. What's wrong with that?
It just looks weird.
Yeah.
It's like 4 mana worth of stuff in one card, though. You get a Mage Hero Power and a Paladin Hero Power. Woo! That's a good card. 1 mana. That's triple Innervate.
Everything you just said offends me. Like, Elven Archer does have uses in the matchup. Like, I kind of do like just being ahead of the board right now because it enables you to like deal 6 to a minion, for example, with the True Silver Champion this turn, which you couldn't True Silver and Elven Archer in the same turn. So it's able to contest, like, for example, I don't know, Polvir Nephicet Ritualist as an on-curve play for 4 mana, which kind of makes sense. But Elven Archer is valuable because sometimes you get into positions where you just have to equality a board to live, just to say your minions have 1 health now, so you don't Divine Spirit in a fire, kill me or whatever. If you have an Elven Archer to go alongside that, it's suddenly a lot more effective.
Yeah, I think Pavel's thinking specifically about the Shrink Ray in his hand as well.
Yep.
I wonder.
You notice this is a turn where Jarla could play High Priest Amet and something else. With the 1/1s in play, those are then contested as well.
That's a great point too.
Jarla, however, has no such luxury. He has the option of Nephicet Ritualist and Beaming Sidekick.
Yeah.
I must consider.
Also worth noting that 1 Pyromancer from Jarla, which makes playing 1/1s for Pavel quite a lot better than it would be otherwise. It's not like Jarla can just reliably blow this board up on 1 turn and then start playing his big minions the turn afterwards.
Nope. He is looking specifically to make use of Bonsomni, which means on turn 6 he wants to unleash board presence, force Pavel to take a turn, and get a clean Bonsomni in play. Pavel's front-loading a lot to fight against that, though. Shrink Ray and Equality in hand. I think Pavel's got a massive edge from this position.
Certainly looks that way.
When the goal of your deck is simply draw all the cards there and make sure you're not taking a lot of damage, check mark both.
This is the problem you do sometimes have in the matchup, is that if huge minions start coming down, like, yeah, you can Equality, you can Shrink Ray, but so many of the minions just have, like, persistent on-board effects that they can still blow you out of the game as 1/1s. If they can, you know, draw cards, if you can then restore health to your Amet and then make a board back afterwards. What's it? Restore health isn't quite the right way of putting it, is it? Rebuff the health on Amet and then start making another huge board.
Adjust it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine-tune the health of Amet.
Yeah, he's like a corrupt accountant. He's just, you know, changed the books a bit.
Right. But if you just have a bunch of 1/1s on board the whole game, and your opponent only has 1 Pyromancer in their deck, then suddenly you're just able to Equality and trade on board, Shrink Ray and trade on board.
Just little paper cuts, too.
Hey,
Yeah.
I got you, friend.
Of course you're interested in how much damage the 1/1s do.
It matters.
It does. It does.
How many times I played turn 2 Kangor?
I don't think I've ever done that. Not that I'm like suggesting that would be wrong. It's just I don't think I've ever had a hand where that was a thing. Like, I'm a Christology gamer with this deck. Like, this is the one deck that I'm actually very lucky.
That card's in the deck?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I never draw it.
Yeah, I am actually the unluckiest Hearthstone player alive. But this one, this deck, I just appear to draw really well with all the time.
What would Uther do?
Let's start by drawing a card. All right, well, the tank is run draw and card draw now. That's the concern for Pavel. Wow, this is a bad hand.
It did just suddenly get quite ugly, didn't it?
3 cards and no card draw makes this much harder.
No lens, no Christology.
I'm curious about, do you need both bankers in this matchup? I don't think you do.
That's a hard maybe.
Because week 2, we saw Psycho pilot this matchup, and he was fighting for the board with turn 2 Baleful Banker.
Yep. Yes, he was. He did have a significantly different hand from Pavel, and we've actually learned as well that Pavel and Psycho are actually, you know, practice partners right now. So I'm sure Pavel has run this matchup specifically with Psycho, and Psycho will have explained the way he played in detail.
The threat grows.
Gets 4 from this, I believe. Yep. Already drawn 1 Light Ward and 1 Psychic. Perfect hand size. Just have a little think for the sake of it.
I mean, spend the time playing out the next turn. Next turn's going to be tough.
Yep. Agreed.
No card draw. And Pavel, you see the raise of the eyebrows there. Yeah, he's feeling nervous. Anytime you don't kill a 7 health minion, you're just at threat of dying.
Yes, you are. Right now, Pavel has to be thinking, those 5 cards on the left-hand side of the hand that aren't the 1-drops. Are they Divine Spirit, and Inner Fire?
Well, they weren't injured Tolvirs early. They weren't injured Blade Masters early.
Yep.
They weren't Power Word Shields.
Psychopomps.
They weren't Psychopomps. They weren't Wild Pyromancers. Like, what else can they be at this point? Circle of Healing?
I'd say actually you can put Psychopomp back into that pool because he would have played it like just as a 3-1 and a Light Warden against a bunch of 1-1s on board,
Sure.
which I don't think would have been a good play.
Makes some sense. So let's say Circle of Healing, Silence, Topsy-Turvy, Inner Fire, Divine Spirit, Psychopomp.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yes. He can, however, I believe...
High Priest Summit.
Wait, is Consecration happening here?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
No, okay. So he could have saved a timeout and used the Consecration instead, which I believe plays around Divine Spirit, Inner Fire. So it's up to you to decide what is a more valuable resource in that position.
I think the idea for him is that he's trying to get more out of Jarla here.
Mm-hmm. And he wants to have that Consecration to blow it all up afterwards?
I think so, yeah. I mean, he's got 2 adjustments in hand with Shrink Ray and Equality. Only one way to actually activate, or capitalize, rather, on those adjustments.
How valuable is that timeout, though? With still 14 cards remaining, that is a lot of turns you've got to get through on the back of one single timeout. Like, what if Jarla just says,
not wrong.
What if Jarla just says go here?
Well, Jarla, how is that dangerous for Jarla, though? You know, what can go wrong if that happens? But that's always the question you have to think about.
I don't really know. I'm like not sure there is anything that goes super wrong for him there. Like, if Pavel was scared of dying on the previous turn, he's scared of dying again this turn when you change nothing, right?
So change very little. I think this is a happy medium between not doing anything and not overcommitting.
Okay. That's fine.
Ooh. That one's a bit curious to me. I guess get the mana out of the way. Like, you start to pressure Pavel to have to act on this.
Yeah. I think now he actually is completely forced to do something, which is very reasonable. This is major clear number 1.
And that means there's 1 major clear left. So I think Jarla is unlikely to play around that circumstance. I think he's likely to do something pretty drastic here. Can you perhaps find a middle ground again? Last thing Jarla wants to do is just give up to a big board sweep again.
Right.
I wonder.
Again, I think just like 1 or 2 minions are just threatening lethal right now, right? You saw how Pavel reacted to the previous turn. So if you have 7 as a base, then you can more arms on top of that for 9, Divine Spirit on top of that for 18. So Armet Light Warden is like my instinct.
Yeah, I feel like using the Divine Spirit here is unusable. I don't think you can do that.
You don't use it this time. I'm just counting how much damage you have off a 7 health minion on following turns if you just have a 7 health minion.
Yeah, I think this is the right spot. This is definitely enough to force.
I just don't even know if the sidekick needs to be there.
Lens picked up.
He wants minions above 7, I guess, to protect from like Pyromancer Consecration, things like that, or just Pyromancer plays in general. Which I guess is reasonable.
I think he just wants the extra health.
What would Uther do?
No Subdue on Pavel's side, I believe. Yeah, no copy of Subdue, so you don't have to worry about the single target threat.
Yeah, that's pretty much what his soup vendor is, right?
What happens if Pavel heals for 12 here? So swing the True Silver, use Flash of Light. Oh, that buffs the Light Warden.
Yep, that buffs the Light Warden a lot.
Yeah, I'm thinking some sort of drastic action needs to be taken here. You know, there is something I think a lot to be said about just Shrink Raying here and having the Amet just sit at 1 health. That could be a bit of a liability.
Which path to choose? It's
that and timeout, I think. Yeah, You can't. I don't think you can risk dying right now. And another prismatic lens picked up. Holy Wrath, I believe, is the card that's missing to activate. Oh, and Wild Pyromancer for Pavel, I believe. Wild Pyromancer and Holy Wrath. If he draws those two cards, the Zephyrus becomes active.
I wonder.
Yep, that seems to be about it. So 2 draws away minimum. Jarla again back in that spot where you're describing, where he's like, do I have to do anything here? What goes wrong for me if I just pass?
I think it's likely where he's going to end up on this turn. And so for Pavel, that tells me that the Shirvala, the initial Shirvala, is going to play a big factor in this one. Like at some point, he's going to find a Shirvala and Banker turn to just fight for the board.
Yeah.
And I think that's excellent game plan from Pavel, where he recognizes I need to use these effects early. I need to use timeouts to just keep myself safe. I'll handle the pressure in the meantime. It's not like Jarla can just freely develop as much as he wants. He has to fear board clears.
I agree with that. I think like Pavel can almost just count minions at this point and say like, my timeouts are fine to be used, because even if I don't get the Consecration or the Pyromancer to go with this, which he does find the Pyromancer, so now he can nuke this board state, and then at that point, he only has to beat a few more minions, and he has Shivala to tempo swing at any point doing that. And like, yeah, Jarla has 2 copies of Silence in his deck, but he doesn't have a card that actually kills a Shivala, which means that thing is going to stay on board plugging away a lot of the time.
It's important that you mentioned nuke it, like entirely with
What would
the Wild Pyromancer, because of Silence. When 2 copies of those are on that side, if that's an interaction that Pavel has missed, that opens an opportunity for Jarla.
I mean, not even necessarily an interaction he's missed, but an interaction that he just doesn't have a choice to play around anymore. Like sometimes he can just get into that dire situation.
Which path to choose?
When he thumbs the Prismatic Lens first, it worries me. Oh boy. He's going to adjust the board with Shrink Ray. And leave it at that, I think.
Now.
Act now.
I've done a lot of Master Spell testing. What I will say is that generally, Zephyrus will like to Master Spell additional cards away from your opponent, as opposed to just natural buffs like that Light Warden had. It was also interested in removing attack much more than it was in removing health. So in that spot, I don't think he would have got a Master Spell. Not that I think that's a good play in that position anyway, because you're still just leaving so much raw health on the board after the fact. Just thought I'd put out my PSA.
So if Jarla draws Divine Spirit off these Power Word shields, I believe that's enough.
Does it still work?
Oh boy.
Well, he doesn't have the Silence,
I think it's enough.
Really?
So it goes to 5 from Power Word Shield. It goes to 7 from More Arms. It goes to
28.
14, 28, 29.
That's not enough, right?
Okay, so he's off by 3 then. So yeah, he needed this Find the Silence.
He needs
in that
to
spot.
silence the 1/1, yeah. No, that wouldn't have worked. He was wasn't he supposed to Power Word Shield on the 1/1 so he could silence the Armet if he drew the Silence to then have the 7 health buff?
Well, I believe his thought was, because Pavel's out of health adjustments and out of timeouts now, what I get to do is actually just play more stuff, and so you get to invest the Divine Spirits.
Okay. So yeah, it's better to do it the way I describe if you are just fishing for immediately lethal, but Jarla has like the 1-2 punch of just saying, even if I miss it, I make a much better board. So it's totally fair enough.
Also, just the Silence was still lethal. You would silence the Ahmet to 7, you More Arms it to 9, you Divine Spirit and Divine Spirit.
Okay, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right.
Either way, 2020 is pretty darn good, and so ignore all that talk I said about the Shirvala making an impact here. It's the Zephyrus that gets the job done.
Take the good one.
That's a tough card to put in your deck, but when you only sometimes put it in there, aka exactly when you need it, Twisting Nether's a pretty darn good card.
Yep.
Jarla with no Divine Spirits left. He's got to go back to the drawing board.
I just don't think he has enough ways left in his deck to build like high health minions to be able to be threatening here. Psycho Pomps. That's what he needs.
That takes 2 turns.
Yeah.
His mana spent.
You're ripping that one.
Topsy the 1/3 first, perhaps. I'm sorry, the 3/1 Pyromancer. Nope.
Yeah, I kind of agree with doing it this way. Okay.
I think that's clear skies for Pavel because that Zephyrus.
Yeah. I think now the Shivala can just take over the game from this point. He has Kangor Shivala available as well. Like, this one's just done. Jarla's cooked. He was cooked when the Zephyrus was active. I think he went in fully aware of that. It's like, all right, I can't beat active Zephyrus this game. Like, let's just go. Did it correctly, despite my questions about it. He absolutely had the right line.
Noticing that Pavel has slowed down a lot in these situations as well.
It's time to test your
Yeah, I mean, like, the game is won at this point. You just want to absolutely make sure you don't do anything mechanically stupid and mess it up.
I think it's smart from Pavel. You know, that's something that I think that he has fallen victim to a number of times in his career. You know, I think back to when he almost made Worlds in 2016, and he just blundered and gave it away. And his excuse afterwards, not really an excuse, just kind of more reasoning. He was very candid about it. He said, I kind of had to go to the bathroom. I was just like, what the? Like, that's it? That's what caused that error? And, you know, that's been something that Pavel's had a lot in some pretty high-pressure games. It's just kind of going through the turn really quickly. You rely on your instinct. You make a mechanical error. Here in Grandmasters, his record has improved dramatically from Season 1. He's looking good in this series, up 1-0. Just taking his time in tough spots and making sure you're doing it right.
Yeah, and I think we have still seen a couple of mechanical errors from Pavel. Looking back at a Dynamatic with a Restless Mummy early on. But I think like maybe that's just going to be something that is going to take some time to iron out of his play completely. And I'll get back on this high horse again. Like, you know, viewers and particularly more casual players will look on and they'll see like mechanical mistakes that they understand, and they'll think that that makes the player that they're watching bad. It doesn't. Everyone makes mechanical mistakes. Literally everyone has moments where their brains just switch off and they lose focus for a second and something dumb happens. The mark of a good or bad player is just overarching understandings of matchups and how to play from a top-down perspective in certain things. The kind of thing that Orange was talking about, criticizing Kalento about, like that level of thinking. Sometimes that's much harder for a casual onlooker at a spot about a matchup, and it's kind of why we're here, because we've got to kind of describe that stuff some of the time and hope that you guys can follow along.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough thing to do, and I oftentimes got to see players do it to be able to understand what they're thinking. Don't always spot it, don't always get it right, but just trying to get in the right ballpark for it. It's tough.
We're trying, damn it.
Look, you play your best, and you can still play good and lose. And I think that's a big part of Grandmasters right now is you know, we're early on still in, I think, this new metagame. Like, was like 4 weeks in now?
Yeah.
You can still make a lot of mistakes. You just have to make less mistakes than the other player.
Yeah,
and that's the idea.
Like, no one is playing bad in Grandmasters. There's a couple of players who have played medium so far in Grandmasters, and that's about as bad as it gets because the standard is just so incredibly high.
Yeah, rightfully so, but, you know, you're human at the end of the day. Yep. Gotta go to a quick break. When we come back, we're jumping into game number 2. Pavel taking on Jarla right now. Pavel up a game, looking clean in game number 1. Stay tuned.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save the world.
My name is Sam Braithwaite, and I'm the Senior Global Franchise Lead for Hearthstone Esports. This event was especially cool because it takes place right after the brand new expansion, Rise of Shadows. Historically in Hearthstone Esports, we do our big events like this towards the end of an expansion cycle, but we really wanted to shake things up and really showcase that not only is the world champion the person who can pilot the best decks, but also the person who, when presented with a brand new game, can put together the best decks leading into the World Championship. Cheers to you guys, the sold-out crowd here for the HCT 2019 World Championship.
Welcome back to 2019 HCT World Championship.
We've had a lot of fun games, and we're looking forward to the grand finals. Showdown. Viper versus Hunter Race. Only one can be the champion. Oh, come on!
You must be dead.
Wacko pick of this coming out from Hunter Race.
It's now or never. Archvillain reform.
Okay! In a completely solved game, Hunter Race finds a way to maximize his chances. It's been a wonderful journey throughout the past few years of the Hearthstone Championship Tour, where stars were made and dreams came true.
Hearthstone Grandmasters weekend number 4. We're in Europe right now, and we're in our second match of the day. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Sottle Welch. I had to put a specific emphasis on the nicknames there so that you know they're nicknames, but that's what we usually go by.
Sorry, that was your cadence that implies quotation marks around the middle?
I suppose.
Yeah.
I think the quotation marks are, you know, you write differently than you talk.
I feel this thread has got away from us very quickly, and we should just talk about Hearthstone immediately.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so we are going to have the reverse of the matchup that we just saw. This is a matchup, one of the few matchups where the deck opposing Priest actually has some game. Like, one of the matchups where they play turn 1 Cleric and you don't immediately concede and play the next game. Like, you can fight back against it sometimes. We just saw that happen where Pavel was able to engineer his way out of a situation very, very nicely. We now get to see whether Jarla can do the same thing on his Holy Wrath Paladin.
To be fair, it was a turn 1 Light Warden, not a Northshire Cleric.
I just said it's the kind of matchup where if a Northshire
gotcha.
Cleric comes down on turn 1, you don't immediately concede.
Well, if Jarla had turn 1 Northshire in that last game, Pavel would have been like, dang it! Just hope everything goes right.
Differences in the deck lists.
Differences in the hand as well. Pavel's opening hand is, you know, I'm going to wait for this first draw, but right now it is garbage, and if it's the wrong draw, it's going to be hot garbage.
Garbaggio.
Okay, not hot garbaggio anymore, or whatever that means.
So here is the thing about these trash hands, is that all the cards that are trash in your opening hand suddenly just get incredible when Northshire Cleric is drawn. It's just kind of the nature of those cards. Like Pyromancer, it's not a great card to have in your opening hand. If you're then piling that up alongside a bunch of Circle Healings and you're not playing the Zoo matchup, then yeah, your hand seems really bad. But you are always one Cleric away from absolute ecstasy in this matchup.
Yeah, it is a prime draw. And so now for Pavel, the question is timing.
You play it. That's the timing.
We've seen players get punished by playing it, though. I've had some question marks at times. I don't think this is one of them.
How do you get punished here?
So it's not necessarily here that you get punished. It's that sometimes you get punished by not having this in your hand. Like if something weird happens and you have to deviate, that's not possible against Paladin as much.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And like from Jarla's perspective, he doesn't know what's going on in Pavel's hand. Pavel does know what's going on in hand. And so for Jarla, it's about engineering a situation where you take advantage of this Northshire Cleric. when you have coin and when you don't have coin, I think that Wild Pyromancer trickery and shenanigans where you can hold Northshire Cleric are way more rare. And you can see the benefit of playing the Northshire Cleric. It's already gotten the payoff, and Pavel is about to rocket launch.
Oh no, I got punished by the 3-2. I'd better just draw 3 cards.
It's the intent of Jarla is there. It's contest that and hope there's no buff. There is much more than a buff.
Ah!
Yeah.
That's
the Jarla's
6 more cards, which is perfect.
So you can change that math as well. So if you play Northshire Cleric and you circle right now, you go to 10 cards, and then you get to silence afterwards and clear off the 3-1, if you want to.
I think you probably just trade Cleric number 2 at that point.
I am not trading off.
No, Cleric number 1 even.
I am not trading off a Northshire Cleric.
Well,
you can't convince me.
You're going to lose your Pyromancer and injure your whole board if you don't. Silence the Pyro trade? Yeah. Yeah, I like this. You said I'm not going to convince you, so I'm not going to try. Just want it on record that I like it. Why don't you just poke for 1?
Yeah, what's Jarla's counterplay to that?
I guess that's a good point.
I guess it would be Flash of Light.
That was a good point, though.
Yeah,
I don't think it's not worth the 1. It's not worth 1. Not in this matchup.
I'm wrong.
Hey!
Admirable never admits he's wrong.
See, no. You see, now you've just revealed that you only said that so you could do that bit afterwards, and you've just cheapened
it's that you wanted to celebrate, so I have to point it out.
Okay.
What is a loon's will?
(3-4) is more annoying than you might think it would be here against 10-card Priest.
What is a loon's will?
Hey, I got you, friend.
It's got a new name.
Ooh. Gives up his final Cleric to Consecration here.
I think if you get a Consecration here, you're pretty happy.
I would agree with that, yeah.
The question I have on my head is like a Wild Pyromancer Flashlight. You know, the same respect to Flashlight he showed last turn.
Yeah.
Let me think.
This matchup is like so complicated. The combo decks are making this format really interesting.
It is, yeah, super interesting. But also, like, to your point just a second ago, I think just as you're happy to get a Consecration out of your opponent's hand, you're just as happy to get a Pyromancer out of your opponent's hand as well. Like, they're both extremely valuable cards for actually changing those equality and shrink ray turns.
Makes sense. Also, playing around the Consecration is like who cares? That's tough to do. Playing on a Wild Pyromancer plus a card, that's easier.
Right.
Just they have to have 2 cards.
Right, yeah. I mean, a lot of the time they just don't have that.
And so now the goal is to get either a wide array of minions to threaten Jarla or to get outside the range of a true silver champion and use that to the same way.
A little awkward to do that, though, because he does play perfectly into Consecration with a lot of the go-to ways to protect this Cleric. Like Extra Arms Beaming Sidekick, for example, would just walk pretty dreamily into Consecration.
I have less interest in using the Beaming Sidekick simply because I have the High Priest Amet in hand.
Yeah, 1-drop's super valuable as soon as you have that card.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Ah. I like this. It prompts action without, I think, doing too much. If your opponent's plays Equality, perhaps they take 7. If your opponent's plays Shrink Ray, well, not so good, but
at least the Shrink Ray is gone.
Yeah. You know, this is something that Jarla wasn't able to do last game, was actually capitalize early on and then force Pavel to have to make weird decisions in the middle stages of the game. For Jarla, that stage has come very early, and that's a world of difference.
Worth knowing as well, if the play is Shrink Ray and Smack this Cleric, not only do you push 3, but then I believe your Psychopomp is just 2 Clerics and a Pyromancer at that point, right? So you just
really good.
Very often get a Cleric back again.
Just got all the options in the world. That's another thing that makes it easier, too. You draw a heap of cards, and suddenly forcing your opponent to have stuff much easier.
Ooh.
Ow.
All right, shut your eyes.
Ow.
Don't look. Don't look. Everything's fine.
Makes a lot of sense, though. Again, it's right on the High Priest one-drop turn. Your opponent's drawn a ton of cards. Like, you expect them to have it at this point.
Yeah.
Will.
He's also staring at that Pyromancer and just begging that he can get towards it somehow. Like Pyromancer Shrink Ray. He does force his opponent to commit more here because there's just not enough damage represented on board anymore.
Such an easy committal, though.
Yeah, it is. It
You're so
absolutely
low
is.
on health. Yeah, I think Jarla has assumed the correct position in this one. Brace for impact. I think if you shrink right here, you're not getting there.
Let me think.
What's the alternative?
Draw for timeout.
Flash of Light timeout?
You're just not going to win the game if you shrink right here. Like, you're going to lose.
Holy Wrath the Blade Master for exactly Cheval.
No.
I mean, technically you described a 2-outer. I'm just going a step further and describing a 1-outer. It's not that much more ridiculous.
I just don't think you
Must move quickly.
there's too much chip damage still.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Jarla has been one of the best when his back's pushed against the wall and he has to make tough calls. The fact that he's not drawing leads me to think he's going to be on Shrink Ray. It might be caster vision, but this is going to be ugly.
It does indeed look very scary.
Just shaking his head, and he's like, what else can I do? I don't want to limit myself to a 2-outer. I'd rather hope that they don't have the Amet.
Yep. Is Pavel now interested in pushing? Extra arms, Acolyte of Pain.
Important to note that there's only one copy of Silence in Pavel's deck. So the fear of Jarla seeing Silence into Blast Off, less common. Pavel also doesn't have Buon Samdi in his deck, by the way. That's just missing.
Still another week on. He didn't have it last week. Doesn't have it this week. Extra arms on the Nefeset. I guess if you do draw the Silence, then having the Silence on the Blade Master is more valuable. But also if you make the Blade Master the must-kill target, then you potentially make your Psychopomp better.
I am very curious about this because Amet Light Warden just looked insane to me. Like, good. Insane good.
It looked like a play a crazy person would make. No, it did look quite powerful. I mean, this also looks extremely powerful. Doesn't this just force another clear and then you still have the Amet board in your hand?
Let me think.
Yeah, it's true. There's no copy of Subdue in Jarla's version either.
Oh, really? What's Jarla playing then? Because he doesn't have the Soup Vendor either, right?
Acolyte of Pain.
Let me think.
Fair enough.
I must move quickly. I wonder.
I think I like this line from Pavel. Just suitably awkward. Oh! Oh!
Alternative.
4 or higher. No. Woo!
Man, I told you he was good at taking risks, and honestly, I didn't even spot that line. And from Jarla, even though he ends up in a loss in that situation, that was a brilliant line. It accomplished 3 things. Number 1, it turned a Holy Wrath, a second Holy Wrath, technically, that you don't need, into a way to clear board. used the Wild Pyromancer as the catalyst to clearing that board, and that preserved both timeout, Flash of Light, and it preserved Consecration in hand. So that way he can find a way to get to an equality and have an equality consecration turn. Like, Jarla actually found the best risk to take in that situation, which is draw a 4-cost card, something that there's quite a few of in his deck.
Yeah, his remaining deck, I believe, still 2 Prismatic Lens, still a Hammer of Wrath, still the Equality, still 2 True Silver Champion, still the second Holy Wrath, still Shivala. So that was 8 outs at least by my count to get that done.
He ends up in a loss, but this is exactly what you were talking about before we went to the break, is that understanding macro play is what highlights a good player. And Jarla has just demonstrated alternatives so many times that can land him in winning positions. If he succeeds on that Holy Wrath, he's in a spot where he can get some card draw chained together, have a timeout still in hand, and actually win that game. That's insane.
Yeah, I think because of what happened in the early game where he was playing against 10-card Priest, he understood that like anything he can think of is just like, well, okay, I could just use my timeout here. I could just use a proper board clear here. And then maybe my opponent doesn't have X. No, they have X. They have X, Y, and Z at that point. They have everything. They've drawn their whole deck. So you have to plan how you're going to beat those multiple stacks of resources. And so to do that, you have to do something silly to clear one of the boards. Like your normal vanilla cards just don't line up against the amount of boards that they have. So I think he was probably right. I mean, we can go back and run some maths on it overnight and come back to it, and it will take some time. But like it felt right. Like after the fact, neither of us called it out straight away. But after he did it, like, yeah, you know what? Any play you made there was a risk, and that was probably the least risky of what you did.
I agree so, but you got to give praise where praise is due. And that's to Pavel, who won this match. Pavel, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, congratulations on your victory here. 2-0, looking clean as well. Liked a lot of the plays you made in this one. It brings you to a 4-3 score overall, and I think the toughest division across all Grandmasters here. Talk to me about how this season has been for you and what's been different from Season 1 to Season 2. How have you managed to put together this winning record in contrast to that first one?
Yeah, I actually think that it's the best, the strongest division, the strongest group, and Europe is obviously the strongest region. And I'm actually super disappointed about my previous match about Boston. I'm pretty sure that there was a chance I could have win with Druid against his Shaman and maybe even Priest by making other line of plays.
So we've heard from several other players that you've been practicing quite heavily with Psycho recently, and like he's partly responsible for like you being so into Hearthstone right now because you're kind of enjoying like talking to him about the game so much. Can you just talk about like the relationship you have with Psycho?
I can't say we prepare a lot. We just sometimes watch replays of my games to analyze. And sometimes he helps to prepare lineups.
And so for preparing a lineup this week, there was a patch that had 2 big changes, which was number 1, Discovery cards, which impacted Warrior, and then number 2 was At Least the Enlightened, which changed to get your hand in order from left to right. Did that throw any wrenches into your plan in terms of getting your lineup together? Did anything change as a result of that?
Absolutely not. I think changes doesn't change much in the meta. The Elise change is just a buff for Druid, but it's not that big of a deal. I'm not even sure if it's correct to play Elise in Druid. And if we talk about Warrior change, you have less chance to get a Mega Devastator, but you also have more chance to get cards like Zilex, which is also one of the best cards. And I think that Warrior is still one of the best classes, so changes didn't impact my decisions about my lineup.
So I do still want to ask you one final question about lineups. No Bomsamdi in your Priest. You appear to be like one of the last people that's still holding out and not going with, the Hunter Ace list. Like, why is that card not in your deck?
Yeah, I think it's bad. It's 7 mana card. And usually you either close the game by turn 7 or your opponent close the game by turn 7 if you're a Priest. I can see it being good, maybe against Druid, or some slow classes, it slightly improve your matchup against Warrior, but you're unfavored against Warrior anyway. It's good when you have Amit and you play one Summit, draw 3 or 4 cards, and you can make a lot of high health minions with Amit. But I think that most of the time when Summit doesn't do anything, and having second Acolyte is just better.
Well, not all of us can draw Cleric double circle every game, Pavel. Some of us need a plan B.
Also, one of the reasons why Osami isn't that good, because you're always looking for 1-drops in the early game, regardless. And Priest is a deck that doesn't have comeback mechanic. You can't really come back on board if you have no minions. But yeah, Osami gives you one powerful turn, only if you have Amit in your hand and you didn't play it in before. As I said, you can Amit and a lot of 1-drops. But besides that, when Summit doesn't do much, I think Acolyte is just more consistent.
All right, fair enough.
All right, yeah, I'd like the explanation. I disagree with it, but you're the one who's winning these matches, not me. So, Pavel, congratulations on your win. You moved to a 4-3 record. I'm looking forward to seeing your next match.
Thank you.
The alpha answer was, I had 10 cards in my hand that whole game. What do I need to draw 4 more for?
He's like, let me figure out a way to prove Sottle wrong on this one. Like, so hang on. 7 mana. I'm trying to win before then. It does make some sense. I disagree with it, but it makes sense. You know, if you're playing Bwonsamdi, you're looking for a range of plays versus matchups that you don't typically face, I think. And that bolsters that possibility. When you don't have that and you have Acolyte instead, you're trying to focus on what your deck wants to do primarily, which is end the game before your opponent gets a defensive setup.
Yeah, and as much, you know, as I wanted to argue with him, just generally because I can't resist trolling Hearthstone players.
Specifically Pavel.
Specifically Pavel. Yeah, there's a few others that we'll throw in there as well. But I actually made this point, I think, was it last week or whatever the first week where everyone just went full Hunter Ace Priest. And I was like, you know what, like, I'm 65-70% sold that Bwonsamdi is correct, but like people are talking about it like that card is the second coming of something. Like it's just a good card that you can play in the deck. I don't necessarily think that it's deck defining, so I was interested to hear from Pavel about what his perspective was of it not being in there, because I am not 100% convinced that that is the go-to list that everyone is supposed to be playing right now.